In a unanimous voice vote, the Senate Commerce Committee last week moved to bring a bipartisan bill purporting to protect children to a vote in the full Senate. This bill, KOSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, claims to purport to protect children from bad stuff on the internet. And believe me, there's a lot of bad stuff. However, in reality, this bill actually doesn't protect children and actually helps the far right censor LGBTQ plus content. So now, as proposed, KOSA would allow online platforms to take reasonable measures to prevent and mitigate harms to minors. So now the harms that they claim that they're protecting children from are things like anxiety, depression, eating disorders, substance abuse disorders, and suicidal behaviors, along with patterns of use that indicate or encourage addiction-like behaviors, physical violence, online bullying, harassment, etc. All of that stuff, by the way, sounds good. I want to put a stop to all that. Obviously, you want to protect kids from those things. Those are terrible things. Right. So the purported aims of the bill are pretty good. Again, we all want to protect kids from that stuff, right? Now, the way they do it, not so good, because it allows right-wingers to basically take this law and use it to censor things that will actually help children, especially LGBTQ plus children. So now, for one, the enforcement is left off to individual state attorneys general. So might not be so bad if you're in a blue state, depending, but if you're in a red state, it's potentially disastrous. State attorneys general would have the power to impose penalties on platforms if they feel that any resident of their state is threatened or adversely affected by the engagement of any person in a practice that violates the act. Okay, and again, it's super broad, super vague, but reading it, you think, they're going to go after the platforms, right? They're going to go after big tech. Well, in reality, it actually caused these platforms to self-censor. Basically, the platforms already decide what kind of users and what kind of content are allowed. This would ramp that up considerably. The standards that the platforms will end up using to make decisions are ultimately set by the state attorneys general, not by the public that it affects. As a result, and this is according to a lot of free speech groups, progressive groups, that were warning last year, hey, look, this would be disastrous because online services would face substantial pressure to over-moderate, over-censor from state attorneys general seeking to make what they call political points over what kind of information would be appropriate for young people to be able to access. So think about it this way. States right now are banning books with LGBTQ plus themes. They're also banning books that have any mention of race or racism. Now imagine those states now having the power, thanks to this bipartisan piece of legislation, to expand that censorship to the internet. Again, discussions of racism, slavery, LGBTQ plus themes, all being censored on the internet. Not only is it gone from the classroom, it's gone everywhere, right? Off the internet, depending on what state you live in. And of course, not only that, but vital resources, information, for example, about abortion, about contraception measures. All that subject to the whims of right-wing attorneys general and corporations that are more eager to control information that you and your children are able to access. And that's ultimately what it's about. Not only that, but basically the Heritage Foundation has even bragged that, yes, this is what it's about. So the Heritage Foundation put out an article back in May titled, you won't believe this, How Big Tech Turns Kids Trans. And it includes this paragraph. Lawmakers can also help raising the minimum age for internet use. Child Online Privacy and Protection Act do. Maybe one way to protect kids from online harms. Another step in the right direction would be to prohibit the sexual exploitation of minors and the promotion of content that poses risks to minors' physical and mental health, which the Kids Online Safety Act would do. If we seek to protect kids online, we must guard against the harms of sexual and transgender content. And then their tweet, when called out, said, quote, yes, we do. Keeping trans content away from children is protecting kids. No child should be conditioned to think that permanently damaging their healthy bodies to try to become something they can never be is even remotely a good idea. So obviously, all of that stuff is based on this false idea that being trans is a social contagion. In fact, the Heritage Foundation also put out a report last year titled Combating Big Tech's Totalitarianism and argued that tech companies are engaged in efforts to tear at the moral fabric of our society at any cost, starting in kindergarten. In it, they cited Abigail Schreier, author of an anti-trans book, which again claims that being LGBTQ+, being trans, is a result of social factors that you learn on the internet. Social contagion. And references a discredited diagnosis of something called rapid onset gender dysphoria. That's not a real thing, doesn't exist, not true. You cannot get trans from, you can't be trans from knowing about trans people, knowing that they exist. That's not true. That's not real. Now, funny enough, in that same 2022 report, the Heritage Foundation warned against tech policy that is promoted as a tool to protect children being used as a pretext for censorship or otherwise being weaponized. Wait, that's ironic. What do you think this is? That's exactly what KOSA is. That is policy that is being used, again, using children as a pretext to censor things like LGBTQ plus content and weaponizing it. Oh, right. They meant tech policy that is against them and other people on the right. When it's against trans people, censor away. Censor away. We got to get rid of them. We must eliminate their existence online and in the real world.